let's start with the stuff then. Okay, so today we'll be having the introduction to our JavaScript. So we'll understand what is JavaScript. We'll and JavaScript is going to take time, right? So we have a couple of sessions which we have. So slowly we'll go and we'll understand what JavaScript, what all things we can do with JavaScript. All those things will happen. Today it's just an introduction, right? And trying to understand what it is, a little bit small concepts of JavaScript. Okay, that is what we will try to understand. Now, talking about the agenda, we will be talking about what is JavaScript. Okay. The second thing we'll be talking about how JS. So JavaScript people in short call it as JS. Okay, so I'll just call it as JS. How JS power the internet, as in how and where exactly the JavaScript is being used in your internet, right? Third thing we'll be talking about variables. Like what is this variables thing? It is a programming thing. Okay, what is this variables? We'll be talking about what are data types. Okay, this is important. Like obviously everything what like these variables, these data types, it will become like a second nature to you. I mean, it will become so simple after some times. Today you may feel a little bit confused with them. Don't worry about it. Okay, if at all that happens, I'll make sure that it should not happen, but if at all hota hai to we'll see it. And then we'll talk about type conversion. What is type conversion and all that. Okay, we'll talk about what is nan, what is infinity. Okay, all these things we are planning to cover today. Okay. Okay, let's start with the JavaScript thing first. So first thing first is JavaScript is your programming language. A programming language is a language where you could tell what to do, okay, and how to do. All those things you can define. Okay, that is what you can do with your JavaScript. So essentially what you do, you write a program, and that program, whatever you're writing in JavaScript, that get executed in your web browser. In your web browser. So that is what we basically use JavaScript for. And JavaScript earlier your JavaScript used to, so whatever the program which you are writing from JavaScript, that used to get executed only in your web browser. Only in your web browser. But later on, what happens when the node came into picture? You heard about Node.js. When people starting Node.js also uses JavaScript in backend. You remember backend and frontend, we talked about it. So here we also use it in the Node.js. So JavaScript as a language, same thing, can be used in multiple places. Okay. Today what we are discussing and all the other sessions which we will be having, that will be around this. That means JavaScript in web browser. How does it work in web browser? Why do we use it? Okay, how do we work with it? All that stuff. But all the things which we will be learning in the JavaScript, for example, how to write the code in JavaScript and all those things as will be applicable to your Node.js also. Okay, so when the Node.js will come, you will just learn the new things. JavaScript, whatever you have learned, that will still remain the same in your Node.js as well. Okay, that is what the idea is. Now, over the years, so okay, let me tell you this background of it basically. So, what happened, right? Initially, when your internet came in, right? You remember I told you we had something called HTML and CSS. So basically, whatever your websites were, right? They were using HTML and CSS, and because they were using HTML and CSS, now what is HTML? HTML is what you see the things, right? For example, if you're seeing a heading, if you're seeing a button and all those things, whatever you're seeing, that is all HTML. Okay, and then what is CSS? A CSS is basically styling on top of it, the colors which you are applying, or some sort of styling which you are giving to your things. That is CSS. So earlier days, like when initially the things had started, you had a website which is very basic in nature. When we say basic in nature, that means you could not do dynamic things there. Okay, we could not do dynamic things, so it was very static. Okay, with HTML and CSS, just HTML CSS, you had a very static website. Okay, and with your HTML, CSS and JavaScript, your website becomes dynamic. Okay, now what is this dynamic behavior which I'm talking about? A dynamic behavior could be like this. Consider this thing, right? You're seeing the screen right now. What if I do this? Okay, And 1 minute. You see, a pop-up came. So your website is interactive. You could do things with your website, right? You got a pop-up right now. It is a dynamic behavior. Okay. This all is happening because of the JavaScript. Behind the scene, there is a JavaScript which is working for it. Right. When I'm doing cancel, it is getting cancelled. Right. The interaction, we are able to basically interact with the website. Now, what is a website? If I have to give you one example of a basic plain HTML and CSS website which we had back in the times, let me see if I can say old HTML CSS website example. If I could show you. Mhm. Okay, so web without CSS it is. No, this is not what it is. Okay, not this one. Da, 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 da. Do you guys remember any of website? Yeah, correct, Piyush. All those things. Actually, I had remembered one website. Sun is there, right? I guess that's the one. No, not this one. What was that? Info Sun करके था ना? Wait a minute, just let me see. I'm getting all those design 90s. This is what I guess. So it used to look like this. The websites used to be like, look like this kind of a websites where you have no you didn't have much of a stuff to do on those websites, or maybe like this kind of a static website. What used to happen, right? You will have a text like this. You can just read the text, and then you can just click on these links and it will open another website, another page where you could read and all that stuff. How you have it in your, say for example, if you open your Facebook in your web, right? You keep on scrolling, you keep on getting things, right? You keep on getting things. So that kind of behavior was not there with a static website. So static websites were like whatever will be given from your initially, whatever will be there, that is what you will have. You will not be able to interact much with the page. Okay, did you guys get the idea of, you could, yeah, Ashwar, you could consider that as a blog also, but in blog also people use JavaScript. So not exactly, but in some ways, if somebody is writing a blog where you do not have any sort of a dynamic behavior. What is a dynamic behavior? Like a pop-up, right? Like you're clicking on a button, something is happening. Like you're scrolling, automatically feeds are coming. Although that kind of stuff is actually coming from your JavaScript. Okay, so that is why you use JavaScript. So the main idea about the JavaScript is that it provides you the dynamic behavior. Okay, and that is why people are looking for JavaScript, because by doing that, you essentially do what? You make your website more appealing to people, right? Correct. So people work more on those things and other things happens, right? So that's the idea. And one more thing, whatever the JavaScript code which you are writing, this JavaScript code, whatever the code you will write, this code actually get executed on the client machine. For example, say google.com, right? So if google.com has written some JavaScript code, that code will actually get executed on your browser, on your mobile. Okay, so back in the days when initially JavaScript came, it was popular but not so much popular. Why? Because you had like you did not have those kind of smartphones. Even your laptops were not that efficient and all those things, because code was getting executed on your system, right? But nowadays, if you see, everyone has like 4 GB mobile, 6 GB mobile RAM, and you have laptops with 8 GB RAM and all that stuff. So nowadays, client machines are more powerful, right? So it makes more sense to execute those code on your machine itself and give you a better experience. Getting what I'm saying? Everyone clear? How, why the JavaScript, is becoming more popular? Because it has more use cases now. Anyone who has any doubt? Okay. So we know, so today so by this we know what is the need of it, like why do we need it, right? So we know to provide the dynamic behavior, we need the JavaScript. Now when JavaScript came into existence, right, there was this question. For example, you have multiple browsers, right? You have Chrome, you have say consider, and in that time, today you have multiple browser, even that time also people had multiple browser, but just consider this situation. You have multiple browser which are like say Chrome, you have Edge, you have Opera, you have what is that, Brave, you have Firefox, multiple ones, right? Now, if you use JavaScript and develop a website, okay, what is the guarantee? What is the guarantee that that website will also work in the other browser also? For example, you created a website in the Chrome browser, so it is working perfectly fine in Chrome. What is the guarantee that it will work in another browser also, or a different browser also? All those things will happen, right? Because what I said, JavaScript get executed where? It get executed in your web browser, right? Now what if the web browser are using different type of JavaScript? Okay, they are using a different version of JavaScript. All those things can happen, correct? For that, to handle that scenario, so that all the website can work perfectly fine irrespective of the browser, what people did, right, they came up with this standard. Okay, they came up with a standard which says that in a JavaScript, these all are the features, okay, that has to be there in the web browser. Okay, that has to be there in the web browser, so that whoever is developing the website, right, that person do not need to worry about which web browser it will work on or not. Got it, everyone? And that standard which they came up with, right, that standard they call it as ECMA script standard. ECMA script, and people sometimes call it as ES standard. ES. Have you heard about ECMA before? You must have heard ES, right? Now, what is this ECMA? So ECMA is basically, if the full form of ECMA is something like Europe, what is that? It is this. I mean, nobody's gonna be asking you, but yeah, just for your own knowledge, this is what does it mean. It means European Computer Manufacturer Association. So there is an association who has decided what kind of JavaScript version will be there and what will be the feature. Now they came up with the standard, and over the time, what happens? You bring more features to a programming language, right? For example, when you initially started with JavaScript, it had a version. Okay, so say suppose it had a version, say ES1. Okay, then new features came, so it became ES2. Then new features came, it became ES3, ES4, right? Like that, the way you brought more features, your things, basically your standard moved, right? A version, that's a new version which you basically got. Okay, everyone till here clear? So ECMA script is basically your ES6, and whatever you are saying, that is for that thing. And if you want, you can even see this. Like for example, I'll just show you this site. So it will show you like this JavaScript version. If you see here, right? So ES1, that is ECMAScript 1 1997. That was the first edition of your JavaScript, right? Then you had ES2. Then some changes were added in ECMAScript 3. Some new things were added. 4 new things got added. Then you had ES6. Usually we nowadays what we use is ES6. Okay, that is ECMAScript 2015 onwards. Okay, and all these new features got added over the years. Okay, so that is what your ECMA script is. And why do you need ECMA again? Because you want to standardize, right? Why do you want to standardize? Because you have multiple browser in the world, right? You want to make sure every browser is actually using this ECMA script thing and basically executing that. Now one thing can also happen. It is not that even though you have developed a website, it will work in all the browsers. Why? Consider this situation. Okay, so you developed a website using ES6. You developed a website using ES6. That means you use the latest feature of JavaScript. Think that this way, okay? And then you have a browser called Internet Explorer. Okay. Now Internet Explorer is a quite old browser, okay? And it supports only ES5. That means all the websites which are written in ES5, Internet Explorer will be able to load that. However, if you will try to load a ES6 website into your Internet Explorer, the website may not work properly. Clear, everyone? Okay, so you just need to see whenever you're, but the latest browser, right? For example, your Chrome, Firefox, they most of the times are up to date and they follow the latest, whatever the latest JavaScript is going on. They basically implement those features. Now, usually what happens, right? All your web browsers, all your web browsers have this thing which is called a JavaScript engine. You remember when I told you about what is a browser and all that thing in the very first session? So all your browser has something called a JavaScript engine. Okay, or you could call it as an interpreter. It also called as an interpreter. So it basically keeps an interpreter. That means whatever the JavaScript code which you people will be writing in the web browser, you have a JavaScript engine which will basically execute that code. That is the idea. Everyone clear? Okay. And you remember I told you this thing also, that JavaScript is an interpreted language. What is an interpreted language? Line by line, line by line. Correct? Line by line. Okay. Anyone has any doubt? Santosh, which part you want me to repeat? And one more thing. So why JavaScript became so popular? See, why JavaScript became so popular? Because it is one language which you need to know. Like, so if you know JavaScript, you can develop front end, you can develop back end. It's like एक तीर से दो निशाने हो रहे हैं, right? From one single bow, you could basically hit. So from one single arrow, you could hit two things, right? So that's the idea, correct? So that's why JavaScript is quite popular. So if I show you the numbers, right? अरे ऐसे थोड़ी संतोष, how will I remember 5 minutes back what I said? I am just going with the flow, right? Okay, so if you see right here, the JavaScript is actually being used in your websites development. It is in the web and mobile apps, right? It is in the building the web servers, the backend applications which I talked about. It is used in the game development. And if you see, it's been 9 years in a row. When I say in a row, that means every year, 9 years, JavaScript came as the most popular language in the world. Okay, that means a lot of people were using it. And this is the place from where you could see this thing, like how did it come? ES6, Anurag, ES6. Okay, and see, how does JavaScript powers the internet? You need to see, right? So you remember this, that you used to request and you will get the data. Okay, with JavaScript, what you can do, right? You can just specifically request the server just to get a specific data. Okay, so earlier many time what used to happen, right? Every time you need to get any data, what you need to do, you have to refresh the page. So whenever you refresh the page, what happens? All that HTML, CSS, whatever the things are there, again all of that data used to come. So unnecessary, your response used to become a lot bigger. Okay, with JavaScript, a thing like a Ajax, which we will talk in future, how does it work and everything. A Ajax thing came up. What Ajax does, it will bring only the data what you need. Okay, so with this, what happened, you could basically drop down the size of data which you are bringing from the server, right? If you're bringing down the data, then obviously what will happen, your website will be faster, right? The experience will be more smoother, correct? So all those things essentially happened in your, because of your JavaScript. Clear? Sir, as the current version is released, it 13 and 5. No, so Pooja, if you see here, right? I mean, see, people call it as ES7 also and all those things. I'll just show you that thing which I was telling you. Be just a minute. Uh, if you see the versions, right? Even all those versions are usually being categorized within your ES6. So 2015, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, even 21 also they usually put it there itself. Okay. And some people in, but you will see some blogs where people will be calling it as ES7, okay, ES8 and all. Don't worry about it. Whatever the thing which we will be learning, all of those things will be covered. Like in the sense, there is no change as such which we'll be talking about. Okay. And you don't need to call me sir as such. My name is Neeraj, so call me with my name. Okay. अभी मतलब मेरे बाल अभी इतने नहीं झड़े हैं एंड मेरी दाढ़ी इतनी सफेद नहीं हुई है, तो नो वरीज. Okay. And usually in a corporate world, even when you'll get into companies, you usually don't call people with sir. Okay, so you usually always call people with their name. Okay, so it's good to have that habit to call people with their name itself. That is in school and colleges that you have to call it. Okay. Okay. So where was I? Okay, so we were talking about the versions which I told you, right? Okay. Now what I was telling, and there is this thing also which you need to understand. So many times what happens, right? Not many times, always it will happen. So what I said, JavaScript is getting executed in the browser, correct? So what will happen many times, the data will come. So basically your HTML will come from your server, right? And then it will come to your browser. Okay, once it comes to your browser will execute the JavaScript which came along with it. Okay, once you get the JavaScript will execute on your web browser, and then JavaScript will change multiple things in your HTML. Okay, and that is something we say client side, sorry, client side rendering. That means the rendering which is happening, that's happening in your client. Correct? A client side rendering, we call it. We also have something called a server side rendering. In server side rendering, what happens? I mean, that is a big. I'll try to show you that thing, but it will not make so much sense right now. But let's do it. Try to understand, right? So you make a web request. Your server sends you ready to render HTML file. So what it will do? It will give you a big chunk of HTML file which has all the data and everything. Okay. See, in the earlier case, what was happening? The data, basically, you were client side rendering. What was happening? HTML was coming to client, correct? In the client, JavaScript was getting executed. While is getting executed, it is making changes to your HTML files, okay? And it is bringing all the new data from the server to show the entire website. In case of server side rendering, what happens? You get ready HTML. That means whatever the JavaScript which had to execute to bring more data, that will be done in the server side itself. Okay, and then what browser will do, then in this particular case, browser does not need to execute the HTML, sorry, does not need to execute JS to get the data. Okay, does not need to execute JS to get the data. It will just show you the HTML. So it will be faster to load. Those websites will be faster to load if you use server side rendering. Okay, and then after that, browser will load your JavaScript, and then your page will become interactive. Interaction will come from where? JavaScript, correct? That is how it is. So that is your server side rendering. We will be talking about client side rendering in coming lectures, whatever we'll be having. Not sure whether we have server side rendering in later on. I don't think we have server side rendering here, but later on we'll see. One more client side. Shiv, what happened? Explain client side. See what happens. Okay, think this way, I'll tell you. The problem is right now, because you do not know about HTML, right? So it is a bit hard for me to explain. But this is something I will again tell you when we'll talk about React. So even if you don't getting it right now, that is absolutely fine. And I think I should waste my time here or not. That is what I'm thinking right now, because anyhow I'll be explaining this thing again. But okay, let's do it. So what I'm saying, in client side rendering, think like this way. Okay, what will happen? You will make a request to the server. Okay, server will give you some basic HTML. Okay, it will not give you the when I say entire HTML, what I mean, an HTML which has all the data. HTML which has all the data. It will not give you that HTML. It will give you a basic HTML. Along with it, it will also give you the JavaScript and the CSS, obviously. And this thing will come on your web browser. Okay, and on your web browser, this HTML will load. HTML will show, like the things will show, and then this JavaScript will execute. This JavaScript which is there, right? Once your JavaScript execute, what will happen? Your JavaScript code may make more calls to your server, may make more calls to your server, get some more data, and make changes to your UI in your web page. Okay, so what is happening? Your JavaScript is getting executed on your web browser. So there could be a possibility that this website might be a little slow. It is not that slow actually, but there could be a possibility that this might be a bit slow. Why? Because JavaScript is getting executed in the server, in the client, getting the data from the server, and all that stuff is happening. That is your client side rendering. Everything is happening on the client. Not everything. The data is still in the server. Okay, then is your server side rendering. Okay, server side rendering, they call it. Server side, SSR. In that case, again, your HTML and CSS is coming from the from your server. However, in this particular case, the HTML which you have, it is more described, like it's more big. It has a lot more data. Now, HTML, if it is already there, a browser will not take much time to show it. However, to interact with that page, to do that interaction, right, do click and all that stuff, for that you will require JavaScript. So what will happen? A website which is being developed by using SSR, that is server side rendering, will be quick to load. Okay, it will feel like that it is quick to load. Okay, and then the interaction you'll be able to do it with that thing. But then you must be thinking that if that is the case, then we should always be using SSR. That means we should always be using server side rendering. Actually, not required, right? Why it is not required, I'll tell you the reason. You need to understand this way. If I'm executing more things on my server, that means I will be using more of my machines. I'll be using more of my machines. Agree? So basically, if I use more of my machines, I have to pay more for the utilization which I'm having, right? So there are certain use cases where you would like to do that. Okay. In other cases, what you want, you would like client to have this execution done on the client itself. You don't want to execute that on your system. Did you guys understand what I said? Just said. Clear? So both have their own requirement and uses. Okay. So but we will be learning client side rendering because that is more, because we basically used more. Consider you guys, right? For example, you are tomorrow developing your website. Now obviously you do not have a server and all those things. You would like to have that code executed on somebody else's system, not in your servers, right? So that's why. Okay. Correct. Adish, it doesn't take more load in terms of what? More load on the server, on the servers, right? That is the thing. I hope it is clear, everyone. Server side rendering. What is rendering? Rendering is nothing. Rendering is showing the things on your web browser. Okay, that is what your rendering is. Clear? I hope everyone is clear. And this is how the thing happens, right? If I could show you this thing, you have like a, again, we have already talked about it. We have a client, we make a request to the web browser makes a call to the web server, get the data. Here you have all that backend, right? You get the data, you show it on the web browser. That's it. Cool. Okay. SSR, Rohit, I have told, right? So it's a server side rendering. That means more thing happens on your server. You have a ready-made, more bigger HTML which you get it, and that HTML comes to your front end. Then that means your browser, and then get loaded fast because HTML, because you're not executing JavaScript code on the client. Okay, you are just using JavaScript just for the interaction things. Okay, you are not using JavaScript to bring data and all that stuff. You are not using it for that purpose. Okay, so you're not, so in server side rendering, what we are trying to do essentially, you are not trying to rely more, not trying to rely more on the client machine, but rather relying on your own servers, on your backend servers. In case of client side rendering, you are basically saying you're putting the work towards the client. That means your client web browser will execute more code. That is what you could say. So obviously, first thing first, interactivity is coming because of our JavaScript. As I said, our pages are becoming interactive. You could click on things, some action can happen and all that stuff, right? Yeah, from backend, basically. So backend, more thing happens on the backend in the SSR. Okay, you have a cross browser compatibility. Why? Because the thing you develop in one website will obviously work in another web browser as well, as long as that web browser is also supporting the same version of JavaScript with which you have developed the website. Remember the example I gave of Internet Explorer? Correct. So that's the thing. You have plugins because JavaScript is so popular. You have a lot of plugins on JavaScript which you could use, a third party plugins which comes up, and you could basically utilize all those stuff. Okay, will and the frameworks. So because JavaScript is more popular, we have a lot of frameworks around JavaScript. So what are frameworks? Today I will not go deep into frameworks because in future we have that. The idea of framework is something, somebody has already developed something for you to use it. Okay, so what people have done, right? For example, you see we have something called Angular and React. So what they did, right, through JavaScript we could do multiple things. Okay, what they did out of those multiple things, they did some specific things. Okay, some specific things they did, and they create a framework out of it. So what we need to do, we just need to use React, we just need to use Angular to make our work so easy. And you will see, going forward, when we'll be doing JavaScript, when we'll be creating some small websites, you will see when we will come to React, you will be like, yeah, React is super simple. Like with React I can do these things very easily compared to what I did with HTML, CSS, and plain thing. Ashwar, framework versus library, we will come later on. So we have a proper session which will come later on. There I will go more deep into framework and library. Today I'm not going because even if I'll go, most of the people will not understand, because as of now you haven't got a taste of JavaScript and the programming and everything, right? Today we'll be focusing more on that. Future we will cover the framework versus library. Okay? And obviously the usability in the backend also you can use. And there are some of the JavaScript engine, right, which I told you about. So the Chrome is one which use V8. Okay, your Firefox uses a Spider Monkey. Okay, your Safari uses JavaScript Core. Okay, that's the name of their JavaScript engine. And then you have Microsoft Edge or Internet Explorer. They use Chakra and Chakra Core. Chakra and Chakra Core. Clear? Till here. Anyone has any doubt? बस ऐसा मत बोलना सर 5 मिनट पहले वाला बता दो, 10 मिनट्स पहले वाला बता दो. That I won't be able to help you. Okay. Chakra is just a name, Rohit, which they have given to their thing. Like, for example, ISRO, you have Chandrayaan, right? So they just call it as Chandrayaan. So it's just a name. Opera, I don't know, man. I have to see Anurag which one it is using. I hardly use Opera. Opera, I guess I have. Have I ever used Opera? No, I have never used. Okay. Plugins, no Shiv. I don't think on plugins we have much of the things. We don't have much of the things because we will not be developing the plugins and all, right? So that is why we will not be discussing much on the plugins. Not needed, Pushkar. You don't need to memorize the JS engine names. You can just like just two. You can remember. You can remember for Firefox it is Spider Monkey, and for Chrome it is V8. Like these two are good enough, more than enough. Okay, cool. Now let's talk about how do we go about programming. Okay, there are a lot of things are there in the programming. The first thing first is the variables. Okay, the first thing is the variables. Now what is variables? Now if I tell you or if I ask you in your math, right, for example in your class 11th 12th or those times you had variables. So if you remember, when you have something like a question where it will be talking about some triangle and all, so what you used to write when you used to give the answer, you used to say let ABC be a triangle, something like that you used to call, right? Then you used to say let x equals to some value. Remember, let x equals to 30, something like that. Correct? That is what you used to do. Everyone? Is there anyone who did not do something like this? Right? Let the angle be this. Okay. Now, when you used to do this, right, you did not know, but this x and a are nothing but variables. Right? Variables in normal way, what we can say, variable is a thing whose value basically changes. Okay, or not changes in terms of, we could also say a variable is something which hold a value. That is a more better explanation, right? A variable is something which hold a value. Now what value does it hold? That is what we will be understanding. Okay, like a container, exactly. Now when I say x equals to x equals to 10, x equals to 5, or x equals to Neeraj, so x is a variable which is holding the value what? Neeraj. Correct? That is what. And we use variable a lot. I mean a lot in the sense a lot. Okay, now before getting into the variables and doing all that stuff, let's do this thing. We will create our first programming code. Okay, for that what I'm going to be doing is, let me just first create some folders for your batch so that I can easily navigate through. So your batch is node, right? Okay, I'll create a node folder outside actually. Okay, and this node folder, and what did we have? I don't want this open folder. Okay. So what I did, I am using my IDE, right? Now, okay. Now I'll create a new folder inside this node. Node is like your batch, a new folder, and it is what? Introduction to JavaScript. I'll name it Introduction to. Okay. Hmm. No, no, no. So again, Adish, I always say just watch what I'm doing. Do this thing after the session. Do it tomorrow. Plus, obviously you have to do it, but don't do it right now. Right now, just listen to me. Okay. Now within this folder, what I'm going to be doing now, our JavaScript, what we are learning today, and what we'll be learning in future as well, that is all client side. That means I would like my JavaScript code to execute on the where I would like that code to execute on the browser. For that, what I need is HTML. So what I did, what I'm going to be doing is, I'll have a new file which is called index.html. Okay. Now usually why, like, we give the first file as a index, first file in the sense the main file which will shown on the browser as index something, index dot something. So this is index.html. Right now I'm going to be writing some HTML code, okay, which you may or may not understand, okay, but don't worry about it because HTML will actually come in the future in the sense in the coming sessions. Right now we are talking about HTML, JavaScript. So I will just show you how HTML can hold JavaScript. That is all what I'm trying to show you right now. So what I'm be doing, I'll just take one HTML, okay, or I'll just type something. Okay, so automatically this code has been generated for me. Okay, don't worry about this code. Right now what you need to worry about is that I'll be creating a new file here, which I'll call it as index.js. So a JavaScript file, for example, how you have your image file, that is PNG, JPG, JPEG, all those things, right? Similarly, a JavaScript file, a file which is holding the code of JavaScript, has an extension .js, .js. Okay, so what did I do? I use something called index.js. Okay, enter. Now, what I'll do here is, I'll just, again, whatever I'm writing, don't worry about it. Console log, I'm just saying hello world. Okay, I just wrote something. Okay, saved it here. Now what I'm going to be doing here, within the head section, this is my HTML, this is my entire HTML. Within the head section, I will write something. Again, what I'm writing, I will explain. SRC. So what I'm saying, I would like to load the script. I would like to load the JavaScript. Okay, I would like to load the JavaScript. SRC means source. From where? What is your source? So I'm saying my source is dot. Dot means current directory. I'm saying from my current directory slash I would like to have index.js. So what does this line means? That this HTML will load in your web browser, plus this JavaScript will also come along with it. Plus this JavaScript will also come along with it. Everyone clear? I hope there is not much of confusion. Okay, good. Now you remember the extension. You remember the extension which I told you, live server. I'm going to be using that. See, I'll just click on go live. See my cursor. I'm going to the right corner. Go live. Click on it. Now what happened? It opened a web browser for me. You see, it opened a web browser for me. Now if you see what we can do, I will just make this code this, like, I will split the screen. In your web browser, in your JavaScript, whenever you write JavaScript and you use this line console.log, what you mean that on console I would like to write something. On my console I would like to write something. Now what is that console? This console actually is, now again, this code is getting executed in your web browser, so the console is also in your web browser. Let's try to find that console. If I click here on the very top right, click on it, go to more tools and go to developer tools. If I click on it, it has console. See, it has elements, it has console and multiple other things. The one I want to see right now is console. If I open that, You see this hello world. This is something I showed from here, right? This is something I wrote in my index.js, and that code got executed and it showed that value in my console. Everyone clear? Any confusion? Yep. Inspect is also there. So what you can do, you can also do something like this. You can right click and click inspect, and you should also see this console. Okay. So this is clear. Now, one thing which I was trying to tell you, right? Let's see. So this is another tab of your web browser, which is called network. Network tells you what all things are going and coming to your web browser. Okay. Now, say if I refresh this page, what will happen? Let's try to see that. See, something happened. We made a call and we got index.html. You see here index.html. So this is the exact HTML. If you see here, a script, this is what the code which we wrote. This is exactly the code which we wrote. Correct? So basically what happened? The code from my local went to the browser. Then browser saw that it has to load src index. Basically it has to load index.js also. So what it did, it made another call to bring index.js also from the server. So it requested server that give me the data. In this case, I have server in my local system itself, right? That how I'm getting that server, because of the live server extension. So index.js is the file. If you see this index.js file, this is a file which actually got downloaded to the browser, which I wrote here, right? This is the exact file which went to the browser, and then browser executed that code. Everyone clear? Anyone has any doubt? Okay. Now, basically what we'll be doing, the code, whatever we'll be writing in index.js, right? That means in our JavaScript code, what this code is doing, how things are happening, all that stuff we will try to see in our console, because we are doing it, we want to see what is happening, that we can see in the console. Okay. Now say if I say instead of hello world, I'll say yellow world. Okay. And if I save, now see automatically, you see what happened, I got yellow world. So essentially what is happening, your JavaScript is actually getting executed on the browser. Everyone is clear with it? Everyone? Anyone has any doubt? Again, Ashutosh, you don't need to refresh because all that stuff will happen through the extension itself. In a normal scenario, you may have to do it. Live server is doing for that thing for you. Somebody was asking to repeat. I forgot that person. Can you ask? Can you put it on the chat? What you want me to repeat? So the use of console, usually people, Nikhil, they use for debugging. You will see that in future. So basically, they put it on the debugging. They see what all things are happening on the code through the console. They write a console so that they know, okay, this code got executed and all that thing. And that's how they basically use the console. It will be shown. Not the backend code, Piyush. It is not a backend code. A backend code is a separate code. It is a code which is right now the code which you are seeing for the websites. It is the code which is coming on the browser and will work. That is not the backend code. Okay. Debugging, Anurag, I explained in the ID wala when we had the ID thing, right? There I explained. Again, the debugging will come later on in the JavaScript. Again, it will come. How do we do debugging in JavaScript? So that will come in future. You can run Bhupender in ID, but that has to be Node. For example, if you see here, right, I can also, as I said earlier, that we can execute JavaScript code in our backend also, right? That means in our computer. So for that, I need to use Node. So if I write Node and then if I write index.js, I'm getting the error. What is that? Okay. Sorry. CD. If I execute the code here, see index.js, but again, see, you see yellow world is coming here. That is your console of your backend. But today we are not doing backend. When we will be doing our Node.js, then we'll be talking about this console, right? Today we are not doing about it. Okay, that's why I'm not talking about this thing. We are going to be talking the things which are happening on the browser. Okay, one more. This is backend you are using. Just now what I used, that was backend, Anurag. Right now it is not. This one is not backend. This is a code which you have written. Obviously the code has to sit in your backend only, right? In server it has to sit. And then that code basically went to your web browser, and now that code is actually getting executed in your web browser. Everyone is good with it so far? Anyone has any questions? Okay. Okay. Sometimes actually earlier when I was like in college or somewhere, so I used to feel like these teachers and all, right? I felt like not good and all this stuff. Even though they are not good or bad, that is different. But they speak for the entire day. Okay, so like for me, I'm talking to you like for 2 hours, and in 2 hours itself, sometimes I fumble, sometimes what happens. So basically talking for 2 hours is like tough. So I wonder for the people who are, from morning to evening they're talking, like the teachers, like the people who are giving coaching and all that stuff. So tough job, not that easy. Okay, cool. Okay, now how do we declare a variable? Now, what is a declare a variable? Basically, how do we write variables? So we know what variables are, right? How do we use that in JavaScript? We do something like this. We Okay, before going to this, I think I should have come here, okay, and explain you a few more things. Okay, cool. So we know variables. Now, the idea of variables, at least we know that variables are something which hold a value or hold something. Now, what we'll be talking about is what they hold or what they can hold. Okay, think this way. We have something called data types. What kind of data they can hold? Okay, there are two types of data types. We have something called primitive and non-primitive. We have two types of data types. Okay, one is primitive, another one is non-primitive. Now, what is primitive and non-primitive? Primitive data types are the types which have single value. They have a single value. Non-primitive are the one which can have different values, multiple values basically. Okay, now what are primitive types? Within primitive types we have multiple other types like string. In programming, whenever we write any text, right, whenever, say, if I'm writing hello, yellow, hello, anything, that all is considered as string. Every programming language, whenever we write text whenever we write text, that is considered as a text, in the sense multiple letter which has, right, multiple letters which has, is considered as a string. We call that data type as string. नहीं अनुराग, वही तो एग्जांपल ही तो दे रहा हूँ, प्रिमिटिव बता तो रहा हूँ स्ट्रिंग है. So primitive is string. Something different you want? Or like, I mean, different in the sense, is your question exactly same what I just said, or is something different you are asking? You can put it on the chat. I mean, if you are asking something different. Okay, so we have primitive mein, we have string is one type. Okay, the other type is called Boolean. Now, if you guys are from IT background, you must be knowing it already. However, for other people, Boolean means yes or no. Boolean means yes or no. Or we can say it as true or false. True or false. Or we can say 1 or 0. So in JavaScript or in programming in general, when you say something like 1 or 0, so if 0, that means false, 1 is true. Okay, 1 is true, 0 is false. True or false. So that is what you call as Boolean. Again, when you are using Boolean, it will be using one value at a time, right? Either it's going to be true, either or it's going to be false. Correct? So that is Boolean. Then you have something called number. Now, number is what? Number is number. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Correct? That is number. You also have something called null. Null. Null means nothing. Null means होता है nothing is there. Okay, null means nothing is there. Clear? Null means nothing is there. Not even blank, Rahul. Nothing is there. Like that. I'll show you like in future. Null means nothing is there. Okay. That way. Okay. Then you have something called undefined. Undefined means that which is currently not defined. No, Pooja, it does not take any memory. Null will not take anything because it does not exist. It's just not there. Okay. Undefined is something, a variable which is not defined yet. That means a variable is there, but it is not being defined yet. Basically, no value is being assigned to that variable. Okay, there is a variable, but it is undefined right now. Okay, we'll see all those stuff. Then comes the non-primitive. Okay, in non-primitive, we have something called object. We will talk about object. Right now, I'm not telling you about object. We have something called array. Okay, and we have something called functions. These three types we have. Okay, so in primitive, what do we have? How many types do we have? 5. Okay, we'll talk about it, Bhupender. We'll talk about null and undefined. I'll show you each data type. I'll show. Okay, don't worry. What I was saying, primitive, string, boolean, number, null, defined, undefined. Correct. Non-primitive, object, array, function. So essentially, these are the only types which a variable will have. Okay. That is how the things are. Cool, everyone. Okay, good. Now this is all what we have understood. Again, I'll be showing you the example of each of these guys. Okay, सबका example बताएंगे. अब चलते हैं वापस to our code and to our this document. Okay, now the thing comes up, how do we, so float and all, Piyush, is there in your C language, other languages, not in JavaScript. Number covers everything. Okay, break 3 minute रुको यार, 3 minute बाद चलेंगे. Okay, so we have variables. Now how do you declare variables? Okay, now there is a difference, and you will be hearing this thing a lot. One thing is called declaration. Okay, one thing is called declaration, and the other thing is what? Can you guys tell me? One thing is declaration, and other thing is, sorry, initialization. Okay, one thing is called declaration, the other thing is called initialization. With respect to variables, we talk about two things, which is declaration and initialization. Now, first thing is, how do we declare a variable? How do we declare a variable? So in JavaScript, there are 3 ways that we can declare a variable. There are 3 ways we can declare a variable. So one way is, we can say var a equals to 10. That means a is a number. Correct? Then I can say let x equals to Neeraj. That means x is a variable of type what? Can you guys tell me? X is a variable of type what? String? No. So, Anurag, I guess you are getting confused. Wait. Anurag, you are getting confused between front end and back end. See, think this way, guys. Just a minute. Huh? See, Anurag, the thing is, code. Right now, you're writing code. So right now, what I'm doing, I'm writing code. Now you have to understand back end and front end in terms of how the data is coming and where the data is going. That way, right? Now, obviously, the code which I'm writing, I have to write code, right? So the code which I'm writing, that I'm just writing a file right now, correct? And once this code has been written, that means all the things which I have written right now, this is in my local server. Obviously, this entire code is in my local server. Okay, and when I do that, this code will basically go from my local server to the front end. Okay, so obviously the code, whenever you write any of the code, right, that initially actually is in your backend server, and then it goes to your client. Okay, so the question which you're asking, am I using backend right now? The answer is local. It means local C. Local C, I did not understand what you meant by local C in the server you are saying, or what? Local drive. Huh? This is like my computer only, right? This is like my normal computer. I just opened an IDE. Okay. And I just open an IDE. I'm just writing the code. Okay. Maybe do one thing, Anurag. If you're getting confused, right? Put that question on your question answer section. After the session, I will get back to that. Maybe there is some confusion which you are having. Okay. Put it on the question and answer so that we can take that care, because you need to have this understanding clear. If you have a doubt there, it will be a problem in future, in the few coming lectures. So I just want to make sure that I clear it up. However, I don't want to do it right now. We'll do it after the session. So just put it on the question and answer section so that I can see that. Okay. Now what I was telling, somebody was asking something. I just variables के type ही. हाँ, तो वेरिएबल के टाइप्स ही तो है ना. What a variable is, Nikhil? A variable is something which holds a value, right? Now what are the values? The data types are those values. So A is of a type number, X is a type of string, you guys told me, right? And then I can also have something const J equals to true. Okay, these are the three types. Okay, these are the three types by which we can create the variables in our JavaScript. That A is holding a value 10, X is holding a value Neeraj, J is holding a value true. Now, how do I know they are actually having that? So, can I do console.log A, console.log X, and console.log? So, if these guys are holding the value, so what I'm saying, console log the value of A, console log the value of X, console log the value of J. If I say that and save it, you see here 10 came, which is the value of A, X is Neeraj, and J is true. Clear, everyone?